Have your attention, please. Have your attention, please. I'd like to begin. I'd first like to introduce myself. I'm Martin Sanchez-Jankowski. I'm professor of sociology here at the University of California at Berkeley, and also the director of the Institute for the Study of Societal Issues, which houses both of the prizes which we are going to award today. And may I just say from the outset, we're very, very honored to be able to house these prizes, as we think the world of them and the people who receive them. I would like to welcome you to the names of the prizes that we are going to award today. They are Foundations for Change, the Thomas I. Yamashita Prize, and Kids First, the David L. Kirp Prize, and they, of course, will be given out shortly. But before we begin, I'd like to thank members of the selection committee, the Yamashita family, for endowing the Foundations for Change Prize, David Kirp for endowing the Kids First Prize, and of course Christine Trust and Deborah Lustig for organizing the selection process for each of these prizes, respectively, and for organizing this very nice award ceremony. But before we begin, let me ask you politely to check your phones and put them on the silent mode before we begin. And I want to thank you for that in advance. Just for a brief moment, I want to review the order of events today. First, the Foundations for Change Prize and Honorable Mention will be awarded. Next will be the Kids First, David L. Kirp Prize, and that award will, of course, happen. And then we will have a guest speaker, Dr. César Cruz, who will offer a keynote address, and this will be followed by a little time of question and answer. So to begin the process today for awarding the Foundations for Change Thomas I. Yamashita Prize, I would like to introduce Bob Yamashita, son of Thomas I. Yamashita, who is Associate Professor of Science and Society Studies at Cal State University San Marcos, who will again start the process for that prize. Bob?
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. I have a really brief amount of time, although I said I'm faculty, I can talk for like 3 hours. But I'm not allowed to. I'm supposed to talk a little bit about my dad and the origins of this prize, and the Foundations for the whole concept of the Foundations for Change. When Rachel Moran, who was then a director before she fled to UCLA, that other place, that, one of the long conversations was, there was this pot of money, and I'm getting directions. Okay, I'm supposed to stand here. There was this, the idea was, what do you want to do with this? And, how could we begin to recognize who my dad was, and at the same time, really try and recognize the types of work which we really value. And it's really hard to find. And part of the discussion was an understanding that working on change is hard. And if you do the work of change, you don't necessarily get a lot of recognition. And the idea of the prize was to identify people who weren't necessarily going to get the recognition, but they were doing the work of change. And if you look at what my dad did, he was in Hong Kong. My version of what happened, they sent their Asian to Asia. He was working for an American company, and he went to Hong Kong, and they specialized in building foundations. So if you can imagine the Hong Kong waterfront, all of the wonderful glass towers, etc., he did none of that. He actually did the foundations, which you can't see. And he did a lot of pioneering work in that, and actually walking across this campus, there's the Tangs. The Tang Center, if you know the Tangs, he was an architect in Hong Kong. My dad worked with them. Li Ka-shing, huge developer. My dad worked with them. Okay, but doing the foundational work. All of the glass towers in Hong Kong are really predicated on some really fascinating advances in building the foundations. And when we were looking at the Institute and thinking about what we really wanted to do, we really wanted to recognize the people who were doing the work of change. Mm-hmm. Being in the CSUs, I know if you talk to every faculty, they claim they're working on change, but when in the type of work I do, one of the first things I was told at a conference, it's actually by Joseph Telfair, who is the incoming president of the American Public Health Association. You know, the first conference I went to, he said, "Yamashita, good to see you." He says, when you look at sickle cell, there's two types of people. There's people working on the disease, and there's people earning a living off of the disease. Ooh. And his comment was, we need both of them. We need both types, but you have to recognize and understand which one is what. Okay, and the idea of the prize was to really begin to recognize the people who are working on change, not earning a living. Okay, I'd like to, in terms of this year's award, would like to bring up Samantha Gottlieb to talk about, since she was a nominee, she can talk a little bit about the.
Thank you, Dr. Yamashita, and I'm interested in your work, so so I nominated Dr. Lauren Heidbrink for this award. And when I first read the Yamashita Award call for nominations, it was sort of accidental in the midst of all these different emails and daily chaos. But even its title, Foundations for Change, basically automatically made me think of Dr. Lauren Heidbrink. The description of the recipient as a social change activist who bridges the academy and the community could not be better embodied in a person than in Lauren. I read that Thomas Yamashita was an exceptional individual, triumphing in his studies despite U.S. political oppression during World War II and unjust internment of Japanese Americans. His career creating innovative edifices and altering the landscape evoked Lauren's own commitments to questioning underlying structures and assumptions about social policies, legal institutions, and representations of migrant youth. In the nearly 15 years since I've known Lauren, her activism and strategic use of anthropology to challenge injustices have been constant. Every time I talk to her, she's up to a new endeavor, weaving together her thoughtful research and vocal advocacy for unaccompanied youth. Finally, Lauren has integrated her family life and her children, who are here today in the back, into her political commitments. She's brought them into the field and recognizes that her personal, academic, and political commitments are not discrete domains. And I think that's really important to recognize what it means to be advocating for change and also acknowledging the demands and important parts of one's life that are not just academic or not just political in the sort of traditional sense. So this is no small feat, and I cannot adequately describe how much I admire her ability to embrace seemingly effortlessly all these responsibilities. I will close with how I described her work in my nomination letter, and I'm more or less quoting myself. Lauren is a role model for what anthropological inquiry should be. I do not know another scholar with comparable convictions, determination, and most importantly, the ability to actualize these commitments. And I think that's a really big part of this award, is that making it real, not just theorizing, as Dr. Yamashita mentioned. I'm thrilled that Lauren has received the Yamashita recognition for her work thus far and for all that she will accomplish going forward. So it's with great pleasure I'd like to introduce Dr. Lauren Heidbrink.
Thank you. It's actually showing. I don't think I want to see that. Let's see.
Great.
There.
Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to Dr. Cruz. Looking forward to your talk this afternoon. Very grateful to the Institute for the Study of Societal Issues for this generous award. And I'm incredibly humbled to receive the recognition of the Thomas Yamashita Prize alongside an inspirational group of fellow honorees. The transformative work of Elizabeth, of Rassidatou, of Marisa, of Alankrita, and of Yvonne remind me that we might and must continue to challenge the status quo with innovative programs and collaborative initiatives. I also want to thank my friend and colleague, brilliant colleague and fellow academic mama, Samantha Gottlieb, who so graciously introduced me. As Samantha mentioned, I met her 15 years ago in graduate school in Baltimore. And among our many trials and travails, Samantha and I wrote up our qualifying exams while my oldest daughter, Gabriella, who's in the back of the room, now 11, slept in the car seat wedged between our computers at a local coffee shop. So thank you, Samantha, for your steadfast support, your enthusiasm, and camaraderie over the past 15 years. And I also want to acknowledge my wildly encouraging and unconditionally supportive husband, Walter, who could not be here today, and to my three phenomenal and inquisitive children, Gabriella, Mateo, and Liliana, who have accompanied me in this work. They are the best research partners because they raise important questions and challenge me to think creatively and constructively about the type of work I do in the world that I want them to inherit. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work very briefly. There is ample and growing popular press on the contradictions of immigration detention. And as a scholar of global youth, I'm familiar with it both as clickbait and as evidence of the trends my work more deeply documents. What is less intelligible and increasingly troubling is that the knowledge, expertise developed through sustained community-based engagement remains peripheral to media and policy accounts about immigration. This has consequences for the public, for policymakers, and most importantly for the individuals at the center of my research, unaccompanied migrant youth who are reduced to xenophobic stereotypes of vulnerable victims, delinquents, and gang members. Young people who I encounter in immigration detention and following deportation to Central America challenge these portrayals, revealing contextualized understandings of how and why young people are on the move. Bringing together the academy and the community, my work seeks to illuminate the unanticipated consequences of policies and advocacy efforts on young migrants and their families. And as you well know, this work can be exhausting and traumatizing and endless. And I often find myself hopeless that change is even possible. And it's in these moments that I have found inspiration in the lessons I've learned from young people. So today I want to share with you a little bit of their wisdom. Carlos, a young man from Guatemala, advises, "Don't give up. You're not alone. We're on this journey together." I met 17-year-old Carlos in a collaborative workshop on indigenous identity and youth migration in a town called Almolonga in the highlands of Guatemala. And from an early age, Carlos contributed to his household by working in fields alongside his father. With limited resources to pay for school and few opportunities for dignified employment with his 6th grade education, Carlos and his family decided that he should migrate to the U.S. to join his older brother in Atlanta. After 3 failed attempts to arrive and remain in the U.S., Carlos and his family now confronted nearly $7,000 U.S. in debt, which had paid for his journey. Assumed to have committed a legal transgression to warrant his detention and repeated deportation, Carlos faced considerable social stigma and ridicule. Together with a local indigenous organization called Colectivo Vida Digna, Carlos and I had spent the better parts of 2 months working on a radio spot for a local Quiche radio station in which young people shared their motivations for and experiences of migration and deportation. Our hope was to help destigmatize the experiences of migration so that young people like Carlos might reintegrate more smoothly into their communities and families. In his recording, Carlos was assuring young people that even amid social, economic, and political precarity that governs much of everyday life in Almolonga, young people are not alone. For me, the lesson reminds us that research alone cannot confront the pressing global issues of our time. In Guatemala, indigenous Mayas historically have been subject to countless research studies and largely excluded from developing research that could benefit their communities. In my research and activism, community members are critical guides to how to conduct socially relevant and culturally appropriate research and how to harness findings to effect social and structural change. From conceptualization to dissemination, we are on this journey together. Mohammed, now 23, he's a 23-year-old from Afghanistan, reflects, activism is not just reacting or dismantling the current system. We must use our imaginations to create. I met Mohammed when he was first placed in immigration detention for unaccompanied children. At a young age of 15 years old, Mohammed spoke 9 languages and was learning Chinese from fellow detainees from China. Perhaps one of the most book-smart individuals I've ever met, Mohammed also had a very kind of philosophical wisdom about him, developed from a lifetime of navigating war zones in Afghanistan and Iran. Over the many years I've known Mohammed, he's taught me that as a researcher, I must not only critique, but likewise endeavor to create. Mohammed has become a resource not only for Afghan youth who struggle to navigate legal systems and institutions in the U.S., but likewise continues to counsel youths he met in detention on the intricacies of applying for college in the U.S. He actually married a few of the youth that he met in immigration detention. So definitely a resource. So now living in New York, himself attending college, he has also developed a welcome program for unaccompanied refugee youth. As resistance to 45's regime strengthens, and as Mohammed advises, we must invest in our attention, energy, and creativity into what we want to grow in its place. Youth Circulations is a website I co-created and edit with a dear friend and fellow anthropologist, Michelle Statz. And the site seeks to engage a broad public in perspectives and experiences of young people and demands that we reconsider the ways we share our research. On our site, Michelle and I feature the work and perspectives of young people, of artists, and of scholars. It's at once stimulating and challenging and restorative. In so doing, young people's nuanced analysis reach wider and more diverse publics with their ideas, experiences, and expertise. Abdel Nasser, a 17-year-old from Somalia, counsels, be patient, persistent, and relentless. I met Abdel Nasser when he arrived in Chicago, where I lived up till a couple of years ago. He had spent the previous 8 months on a bus from Somalia to Kenya, on a flight from Kenya to Brazil, and then walking from Brazil to the United States. His patience and persistence and relentlessness, he explained, allowed him to survive the harrowing journey and months in immigration detention, both in Mexico and the U.S. Just last month, Abdel Nasser called from Minnesota, where he's driving for Uber and working towards a bachelor's degree in computer science. He had just been granted U.S. citizenship and was already trying to figure out a way to cobble together funds to go visit his mother, who, until last year, he had thought had been killed. In my work, I take up Abdel Nasser's advice to be patient, persistent, and relentless in seeking to apply knowledge to inform public policies, be it organizing lobbying days, drafting policy statements, training students on policymaking, briefing the State Department on my research. I've tried to bring the voices and perspectives of young people in their communities into direct conversation with lawmakers. Now, these conversations are not always welcome and are often uncomfortable. But with persistence, I'm convinced that positive change we seek to create will move us forward together. And finally, Ichkik, a 17-year-old from Guatemala, importantly advises us all: dance, sing, meditate, pray, daydream, read, journal, cry, eat, laugh, find joy, and seek purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to meet you and survive and see it. Okay. Also this.
And we need more.
Okay, and I also want to say that we actually have honorable mention, but she couldn't make it, and her name is Elizabeth Clark-Rubio, and she was doing some really fascinating work with undocumented students at UCI.
David, you're up.
So it's really a pleasure to be able to be here and to acknowledge the great work that undergraduates at Berkeley do. I've been teaching here for longer than I care to remember. You had to swim across the bay to get from San Francisco to here back in the day. Hadn't invented bridges yet. And I've been always struck by the creativity, the ingenuity, the imagination of students who are here. I was talking to somebody who has a high-tech startup, and he said, I'd never hire somebody from Swarthmore, he mentioned, which is a wonderful liberal arts college. He said, because they're so pampered. They get their hands held all the time. They don't know what to do when you just sort of give them a project. Whereas students at Berkeley, you say, here's a lab, here's a project, go. So there's much more inclined to be initiative takers. Certainly true of the prize winners this year. I've been involved in education policy and youth issues since I founded something called the Harvard Law and Education Center, which brought litigation to promote equal educational opportunity. I've taught courses here to undergrads and graduate students. I've written about the issue. I was consulted with a whole host of agencies, was on Obama's education policy team in what feels like the Ice Age, even though it just 10 years ago. What a 10 years it's been. The prize winner, I thought, let's honor an undergraduate and undergraduates at Berkeley that have been, in effect, social entrepreneurs, advocates in various ways for children and youth, whether in education or a whole array of other activities they could be working on. And today's prize winner, who can't be here, because I'll tell you why in a minute, exemplifies this to a T. When I read over what she had done, I thought just how astonishing this is. This sets a very high bar indeed for our students. So Rassidatou Konate, and I'm hoping I've pronounced her name correctly, is studying in India right now, so can't be here. She's a public health major and a global poverty and practice minor at Berkeley. So Rassidatou grew up in Burkina Faso, which, as you may know, is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's certainly a place where most children and youth don't have the possibility to develop their full potential. She attended the prestigious African Leadership Academy in South Africa before coming to Berkeley, and there she honed her remarkable leadership skills. 2 years ago, she launched the Iwili Project and has been running it long distance from Berkeley during the year, and she goes back to Burkina Faso during the summer. So let me just tell you a bit about this multi-pronged project. This youth-led initiative aimed at developing youth entrepreneurship in her home country. Iwili means rise in Rassidatou's home language, and in her application she wrote, "The program came to life as a call to the youth in my country to stand up and take advantage of the opportunities entrepreneurship offers us to better our lives and our communities." Now, what does that mean? So she's created a program that's designed both for high school students and university students. The high school students spend a year creating community service projects, and they start their own businesses to fund those projects. This whole enterprise is self-funding. University students attend a summer-long incubation camp, kind of boot camp for budding entrepreneurs, where they begin developing individual projects. They get a year of mentoring, and then they pitch their projects to a jury of investors and leaders, and the best teams get funding, which enables them to launch their enterprises. Each team that receives funding has to sponsor a new team 5 years after the launch, so the project becomes self-perpetuating. Isn't that stunning? I wish she were here, but let's give Rassidatou a round of applause in absentia. Quite astonishing. Astonishing as well is the second place winner and the honorable mention winners, and I want to call each of them up in turn to say a few words about the work that they've done. Marisa, Ahmed, honorable mention student.
So I work in a program called Create with the Public Service Center, and Create brings visual arts, theater, creative writing, and dance classes to schools across the Berkeley and Oakland area. So before I said more about it, I want to share. So that was a little difficult to hear, but basically the main goals of Create are to provide arts enrichment to schools and community organizations that lack funding, to create an interdisciplinary creative community among Cal students, and thirdly, to support diverse creative expression and exploration. So this last tenet is what my co-director and I really tried to focus on during our 2 years as program managers. When I taught in Create my freshman year, I really frequently heard from my first and fourth graders things like, I'm not good enough to do this project, or can you do this for me, or my work is ugly, I don't like it, or I'm bad at art. And although these statements are not out of the ordinary from what you'd hear, it's indicative of a bigger problem. We thought that children so young were viewing themselves as incapable already. So CREATE actually stands for Creative Residencies for Emerging Artists Teaching Empowerment. And we realized that although technical art skills are important, it was even more important to disrupt the pedagogy and help students feel capable and important, and to feel able to try new things and create different types of art, contrasting to what they usually see in textbooks or museums. So we felt that we could best achieve this mainly through community engagement and connecting the different facets of the Berkeley arts community. So first, we applied for the Berkeley Civics Arts Grant to be able to hire 4 local teaching artists who were very seasoned in the Berkeley Unified School District, 1 for each discipline, and bring them in to mentor the CREATE students for the entire semester. And they'd meet once a month and go over classroom management, curriculum building, and then how to bridge the arts and social justice. And then secondly, we created more opportunities for students to share their work and see what others their age were doing, because no matter what age you are, where you come from, what you have to say in your art is really important, and we want to make sure that the children felt valuable, felt that their work was valuable. So these are images from the first district show that we held. So it was open to BUSD and OUSD, and they all came to Lower Sproul for one afternoon, and we partnered with Build, and so these are pictures of the creative writing students performing their poetry, the dance students dancing, and we also had Cal Arts groups perform before us, so they got to really engage with the university students and see their peers as well. And then this is just some examples of the student work. Yeah.
Introduced the honorable mention, and I've got to tell you how hard it was to make choices. As I was talking to the people who were on the committee, it was really the selection process is really difficult because you can hear about the creativity. So let me introduce them one at a time. They'll come up and talk briefly about their project. So hear from Alankrita, Dayal.
Hi everyone, I'm Alankrita Dayal, and I currently run the programs known as PUF, Program Your Future, here at Berkeley and around the Bay Area. And I just want to say how thankful I am to have received this award and this wonderful opportunity to be here today and present a little bit about the programs that I've been running. So for as long as I've remembered, I've always wanted to create and maximize lasting positive impacts for my community and better the lives of everyone around me, especially children and youth. And so I've always set goals and paths that will allow me the opportunity to do so. During my K-12 years, as one of the very few and sometimes no female students in my advanced math and science courses, it was very difficult to find mentors and have my voice heard or feel welcomed in the field due to the implicit biases. I remember walking into my first day of AP Computer Science class in high school and seeing only one other girl in a class of 38 students. Once in college electrical engineering courses, this figure didn't change much, where almost all students, TAs, and professors were also male. It was very discouraging to be the only female in many of my sections and seeing peers drop out of the major. By defying the status quo, I was able to pursue my passion for computer science, and through my reform efforts, I've been actively inspiring others with the necessary tools, connections, and resources to be able to do the same. More specifically, in 2014, after winning 2 national grants, I founded Program Your Future as a series of after-school, weekend, summer programs to educate and empower Bay Area young girls. And since then, in my continued role as the executive director of PUF over the last few years, I have expanded my efforts to organize large-scale engineering programs ranging from academic boot camps, hackers academies, training programs for both instructors and others interested in the technical space, internships, fellowships, to diversity panels, hands-on field trips, and robotics for goods competitions in order to best inspire, educate, and retain 5th to 12th grade and undergraduate students interested in pursuing computer science across the Bay Area. By designing multidimensional programs at both the policy level of framework and the school level of instruction in class and culture, I've successfully empowered over 850 plus young women and minorities through the community programs that I've launched to date. Further, over the last 20 months, I have recruited, taught, and actively mentored roboticists in developing and implementing scalable, low-cost, and sustainable educational technology, from fun and engaging VR course materials to tailored robot building and programming games, into new PUF programs aiming to weave equity into gamified concepts and practices. My goal has been to advance educational technology tools to incorporate an analytics framework on the back end to track and improve upon success, increase access and opportunity for underrepresented low-income students, and best relate engineering fundamentals and computational thinking to beginners in the field. In all my efforts, my vision matches completely with that of Kids First. To me, equity and inclusion in STEM and CS is not just about whether classes are available, but also about how those classes are taught, how those students are recruited, and at what age, and how the classroom culture can support diverse learners and promote retention. Through the reconnection opportunities that I've constructed for my students, PUF has been a platform for support and mentorship along every step of our students' academic journey, from middle school up to undergrad. For PUF, I'm excited to continue inspiring and preparing underrepresented youth for a career in the technology fields, bringing innovative ed tech tools to instructors and propelling my social good efforts into other regions of the United States and abroad. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.
It's really exciting. As I introduce the last of our honorable mentions, Yvonne Dorantes, it's exciting to me that, as you may have noticed, all of the award winners are women. You know, and you just look at the range of things that they're working on. Entrepreneurship, you know, in Burkina Faso, and an arts program and a technology program. It's, you know, it's just a great day. It's also a very international group. So this is new America, the new face for America. And I'm really delighted to be part of it. So, if Yvonne Dorantes will come up.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for having me. Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne. I'd like to start by thanking all of you for being here. Professor Kirp, thank you. Thank you for this recognition. I also want to thank all of these organizations who have had a major impact in my life and have kind of shaped my interests, my goals, have really helped me grow as an educator, as a person, and have really allowed me to give back to my community. Beginning as a young age with the migrant education program, I was initially a student, and then towards the end of my high school career, I was able to give back and serve as a teacher assistant during our Saturday intervention program, helping newly arrived immigrant children catch up on everything they had been learning Monday through Friday, catching them up on Saturdays. And that was all through the last couple years of my high school career. And then coming to Cal, my freshman year, I was able to quickly pick up a work-study job with pre-college TRIO program, which has allowed me to help, empower, and educate 7th through 12th graders on the college process. And these are all first-generation low-income students that I am able to guide through the process. And I am able to be that person that I wish I would have had during the application process. Moving forward a little bit to summer 2016, thanks to the Mitsui Center for Politics and Public Service, I was able to intern at the Capitol here in California for Assemblymember Rudy Salas, who is the chair of Business and Professions, and at the time was also sitting in the Higher Education Committee. I was also able to witness policy in the making firsthand that was going to be impacting higher education in the entire state of California. That was super cool. Through the Mitsui Center for Politics and Public Service in summer 2017, I was also able to be their local government fellow. and I was able to return to my community of Salinas, California, and serve as a program coordinator for the Young Legislators program, which allowed me to create 2 cohorts, both in East Salinas and South Salinas Valley, which consisted of a lot of migrant education program students. So there was a full circle with me being a migrant education student, and then me returning and making connections and allowing and opening opportunities and doors for them. A lot of these students, it was the first time that they had been outside of the region of the Monterey County region. These are a lot of migrant students. You know, some of them had no idea what the California capital looked like, and they were exposed to a lot of opportunities for civic engagement, for ways to voice their concerns or opinions, their passions. And then this past year, as a Haas Public Service leader through the Public Service Center, I was also able to create an original project from scratch that I titled Trees, Training for Resource Management, Environmentalism, Ecology, and Sustainability, through which I worked with 150 students from Oakland Tech High School and taught them all about sustainability, what the environment is, how they can lead more sustainable lives, as well as policy that is currently affecting our environmental issues. And so I'd like to turn to a short story that I actually presented about 8 years ago to the Monterey County Board of Education in regards to my experience with the migrant education program. It's called The Starfish Story. Some of you may have already heard it. It's by Lauren Isley. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy hurriedly picking up and gently throwing things into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "Young man, what are you doing?" The boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back in, they'll die." The man laughed, and he said, "Don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the surf. Then smilingly at the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one." In the world of social justice, of public service, of education, we strive, to make a difference to as many starfish as possible. But I invite you today to remind yourselves, to remind others that you can make a difference, even if it's one starfish at a time. So thank you all for this recognition.
Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Dr. César Cruz. Dr. Cruz was born in Mexico. He migrated to the United States with a single mom. He grew up in South Central Los Angeles and attended UC Berkeley, earning a BA in history. He's received his doctorate in education from Harvard University and was the first Mexican immigrant male to do so. He's been an educator for 23 years, and he has dedicated his life to fighting for justice. He is the author of 2 books, Revenge of the Illegal Alien and Bang for Freedom, and is co-founder of the Homies Empowerment Program in Oakland, California. Currently, he is designing a high school for youth who have been previously incarcerated, and he is building it based on gang assets. The title of his address today is Our Voice, Our Mobilization, the 21-foot ladder for life's 20-foot borders. Please join me in welcoming Dr. César Cruz.
No, that's starfish we need. We need that starfish. I was told I only have about 3 hours, so I'll be brief. It's amazing to be back home. I was an undergraduate here for only 17 and a half years. I was on a 17 and a half year plan, and I didn't know that there was a plan such as that. I started here in 1991 and I finished in 2008. And so it's good to be back home, and although I have a doctorate from Harvard, I am deep committed alumni and proud of being a Bear. So it's good to be home. Before starting, I wonder if we could take a moment to go back 7 generations. And as we go back 7 generations, it's hard to know our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. There's these beautiful shirts that some students are wearing now that says, "I am my ancestors' most wildest dreams." I wonder if you're your ancestors' most wildest dreams. Let me ask you a couple questions. How many of you are the first in your family to graduate from middle school? Yeah, I know your ancestors' most wildest dreams. How many of you are the first in your family to graduate from high school? How many of you are the first in your family to go off to college? Híjole, the numbers are rising. How many of you are the first in your family to graduate from college? Or hopefully graduate soon? I'm telling you nothing new, and I think you are your ancestors' most wildest dreams. I want to give thanks to 7 generations ago, and I also want to give thanks to this land. We are on sacred Ohlone indigenous land. And if you give me permission, I promise I never set off fire alarms, at least not intentionally. I want to light a little bit of sage to say thank you to your ancestors, and I want to say thank you to you that you came here today. Now, there was a beautiful meal before, but I don't know if before that meal you haven't eaten in a week. I don't know if you're about to be evicted. I don't know if you or a family member is about to be deported. I don't know if you own your own home or if you're fighting gentrification, but you're still here. And I just want to say thank you that you came, and I hope to honor your time in that good way. Is it okay if I light a little bit of sage? Before I start my remarks, there's a field in science called epigenetics. And epigenetics studies our DNA. And they found in our DNA that intergenerational trauma passes on in the body. But we give less research and less time and less focus to intergenerational wisdom. And so I hope that you give yourselves an opportunity to have your great-great-great-great-grandmother write to you a love letter whenever you need it. And watch the wisdom that they'll pour. Because they have dealt with presidencies before. They have dealt with other struggles before. There have been other borders. And so today we're going to try to channel that intergenerational wisdom. With your permission, is it okay to speak? If that changes, just throw something at me. But I will try and dodge it. I finished my remarks earlier this morning, and believe it or not, I'm deeply nervous. And so they're written remarks, but not because I don't want to give you eye contact, but because I really am in deep awe and appreciation of this organization and also of the awardees and the honorees today. It is such an honor to be in your presence here at the Institute for the Study of Societal Issues. And what a time to study societal issues, is it not? What an honor to get to share some remarks at the 2018 Social Change Awards. It is in the spirit of change makers from all walks of life, like the late great civil engineer, your pops, Thomas Yamashita, to one of our OG radical journalist professors who's here, David Kirp. here at UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Journalism that these prizes are named for. I stand in deep appreciation of all the organizers, all the activists from all walks of life, ethnographers, professors, entrepreneurs, mentors, founders of organizations, radical enough to pick up starfish. And they're doing it from East Oakland all the way to West Africa. I salute you. Knowing that you have prepared yourselves to be a voice, to project voices that are far too often ignored, silenced, and marginalized. Is there a more sacred calling than choosing to stand up and be in solidarity with humanity at a time such as this? As you know, however, intentionally or otherwise, many voices not only get left behind, but some are even trampled on at an early age. Some people, including many kids here in the Bay Area, are caged in juvenile halls starting at the age of 10. Imagine being caged at the age of 10. And their wings are clipped before they even learn to fly. Through my own journey as a kid, as a teen, and now as an adult, trying to find both my voice and a way to stand with others, I have humbly learned that, whether we know it or not, we all carry 4 backpacks on this journey. If you allow me, I'd love to explore these 4 backpacks as they may provide a roadmap for what we can do as we continue to stand up for what is right, speaking truth and organizing with the people in our collective quest for justice. But I want to start by asking you to go back to kindergarten. Take yourselves there. For some of us, it was a cool minute ago. See, my first backpack was given to me when I was 5. I had little to no homework, but I already carried words in it that weighed me down like a ton of bricks. Bastard. My father walked out when I was 2. Abandoned. My mother left me in Mexico when I was 5 to cross that man-made border to one day make a home for us in the U.S. Many years later, I would cross that border unaccompanied, trying to reunite with my mom only to meet a new father, a man I desperately wanted to hate because he was not my pops. This new father used humor to ease the pain of heart and belly combined. I remember enjoying dumpster diving amidst trash and feces to look for cans and cardboard because he made it a game that we could play to see who could get the most in the least amount of time. That way we could eat that month. He too was a sociologist. He used the word pobrification. He'd say in broken English, diagnosing our economic situation. We escaped to a world of Ricolandia where we dined at imaginary restaurants, passing the Grey Poupon, even if we were really in a Compton alleyway digging amidst trash for cans, but we were never the only ones. I know there's some here in the room today. It turns out Mexican boys aren't the only ones digging for scraps, whose mom is trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. But home in the U.S. meant constantly moving to dodge immigration, high rent, and even news infomercials that still paint our people as criminals today and somehow as recent arrivals. On 3 occasions, Mommy never came home. She was locked up and eventually deported. It wasn't news to anyone, but it was news to me. Each time I'd cry myself to sleep thinking Mommy would never return, but I hid those tears because, quote unquote, boys are not supposed to cry is what they told us. Oh, how I wish I had someone like you. I want to go to Create. I want to go to Puff. I could have done something with this pain. I wish you would have been by my side, who would help give me voice to my tears, who would report the pain of the barrio cries that too often go unheard. See, this first backpack, that backpack number 1 is called our given reality. Now it became backpack number 2, the one we call coping. It no longer carried just words. Now it helped me handle that pain. It carried rubber cement glue in a plastic bag. Please don't judge. But I, like many kids in pain, just wanted it to go away, and we self-medicated, hoping our heart wouldn't rip out of our chest, because words sometimes are not enough to explain the intergenerational pain that we carry deep within our DNA. I missed my dad, and I missed my mom, constantly uprooted, needing my attachment to repair, no longer wanting to be called you're illegal or bastard, wanting to be seen by teachers, sociologists, and journalists not as less than, but as equal to. So I tried to numb it all away. That glues, chemicals dance in a plastic bag that I'd place over my head to numb me to sleep. Maybe if I didn't wake up, I would stop being your beaner. I remember, as much as I tried to hide or numb my pain, someone noticed me and gave me a gift, the gift of writing, of expressing myself, of finding this voice, of helping me find the counselor within. See, these words would tear and tear onto a napkin, practically writing themselves, and later an educator would call them poetry, would call them newsworthy, would call them truth. I'd ride under the riverbed for months, maybe years. I wondered if other boys tore pages with their tears too. Who knew that writing could provide a release, an escape, a potential path towards healing? Who knew that speaking could provide a release, an escape, a potential path towards freedom? Hitting helped. I hit the daylights out of baseballs, and I became a decent batter. But it certainly didn't start out that way. This hidden talent came from ticking off my little league coach as he'd say, just bunt the ball, would you? After 3/4 of the season on the bench, I had enough. I took a shot. I swang ever so awkwardly and pounded the ball to deep right field. I hit it so hard I fell to the floor. All I could hear was screams of, "Run! Run! Run!" So I ran to batting cages, to poetry events, to places that value our voice, to anywhere that would help me find our hidden talents, so that I too, like you, could exist with a purpose. Imagine if all our youth felt that they too had a purpose, that they too had hidden talents, that their voice also mattered. It was there that backpack number 2, the backpack of coping, transitioned to become my third backpack. That people like you who dedicate yourselves to standing up to make a difference where we can find ourselves help me see I was finding backpack number 3, my resiliency, my agency, and my voice. In it, I found not just a pen, a bat, or a mic, but Grandma's picture. I began to see my elders. Torn edges, a black and white stage photo from the 1940s of a stoic woman, which failed to capture her colorful spirit, serving me as a reminder of lessons still unlearned. She'd stretch out her droopy arms, dare I say the Great Spirit manifest, and I knew that once again there was refuge in her loving embrace. It was there in her arms that I found peace. Imagine the power of our droopy arms, of a place that will embrace you, that can help you find the peace within. She would drop history bombs on me, y'all, reminding me that when her grandma was here, this land was called Mexico. That these territories have names like California, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Texas for a reason. She said this was also indigenous people's land, a lonely land that we are currently on. She said 2 grandmothers ago, we were home, not recent arrivals. We were citizens in our own country, but 2 grandmothers later, now, mijo, they call you illegal. But mijo, she said, you didn't cross the border. The historical border crossed us. As a Mexicano, stop calling yourself an immigrant or a recent arrival. Even without papers, you are home. Although she was the one with cataracts, it was I who couldn't see her wisdom, because mainstream schooling and the mainstream news had me duped into believing I was CNN and Fox News' wetback. Her death was like laser surgery to my vision, to my voice. Her intergenerational wisdom and not my historical trauma was becoming my roadmap to resiliency. I found a metaphorical box in that third backpack, and it was called You've Got Hidden Gifts. With new eyes, with unlearning what schools had taught me about borders and what my grandma had taught me about monarch butterflies, I began to see that there is another way. I was told I was cognitively reframing. I was seeing the cup as half full. It allowed me to see my first backpack, to look back as you might look back on our given realities in a new way. My father leaving was a weird type of blessing. He stopped hurting us. He never killed us. He only committed suicide and killed himself while I was an undergrad here at Cal. My favorite F word to you, Father, became I forgive you. My mother's deportations, a deeply hidden blessing, because she is the one that taught me that a 20-foot border can never stop the will of someone who carries an invisible 21-foot ladder. My life's calling, maybe our life's calling, is that fourth backpack. For me, it meant making manifest the 21-foot ladder within. I came into education 27 years ago. Started here in 1991 at my alma mater, UC Berkeley. And 23 years ago, I became a new kind of street pusher. And I humbly ask you to consider doing the same. I have a feeling that you came into activism to give voice not just to the 20-foot borders in front of us, but to build 21-foot ladder movements. Not just to speak truth to power, but to build the counter narratives that honor those backpacks we all carry. For me, I became a new kind of dumpster diver, a sniffer of pain, a hidden gift finder in a school setting with a formal title of educator, poet, activista. Like you, seeing tools in multiple programs or seeking tools there for the journey that I have been called to do. For the last 23 years, there's been no branding or lining kids up. Please never call me Mr. or Dr. Cruz, just Cesar. No memorizing the 38th president, merely asking kids to be sociologists and journalists of their reality by deeply observing 38th Avenue. We cook up quantitative and qualitative research like it's the thing to do in the town. I ask questions, make students feel comfortably uncomfortable. But I start with me. Where am I from? Opening my own wounds like I'm doing today, most with little or no prodding. If I want them to open up, I got to take that first step. I ask youth to consider that the downest homegirl on the block may not be a gangster or a politician, but it's grandma. Then I deal. Dear people, we are dealers. Let's slang hope. And we have to push harder than multinational drug and fake news pushers deal dope. I, like you, operated as if life depended on it. Like if every starfish actually mattered. But I'm clear, I'm no one's savior. No one needs us to save them. My job and our job is to help kids find their own 21-foot ladder within. Your job might be to give voice, light, research so that the 21-foot ladder movements speak for themselves. I pay attention and listen for that first backpack, their given reality, and I notice if they share it, knowing if their cup is half empty or half full. My job is not to put rainbows when it rains, but to stand with youth in the rain as we find umbrellas and shelters together. I gotta assume that we are not to spin doctor the truth, but to bring forth a reality that still offers critical hope in 2018, even when corporate news would want us to believe otherwise. I notice when people act disposable, disengaged to numb the pain, how they graduate into the second backpack of merely coping, of drinking the pain away. With time, exploration of knowledge of self, and then I'll take a bullet for you, love. I help them see what's already inside of them. Their gifts, talents, and resiliency, that third backpack within. If I can help a youngster explore their life's calling, get to that fourth backpack, my job is almost done. That doesn't make me exemplary, but merely blessed to carry a lot of backpacks and privileged to pass them on. We do so for all youth, for all voices, but in particular, those who may still cry in the dark, and those who may not know the shine in their diamonds, that they are worthy of more than just dumpster diving. And so, to the honorees of the Institute for the Study of Societal Issues, Social Change Awards, recipients, and all of you in attendance, I humbly ask you, in the next phase of your life, to notice the 4 backpacks, especially your own. Our first backpack, what was our given reality? What were we born into? And how do we think we see it now? Our second one, how do we cope? How do we handle things? Is this the end of the world or an opportunity for change? Especially right now when it seems the country may be on the verge of civil war. Our third is finding our resiliency, and our fourth is manifesting our life's purpose. Imagine our role, not as voice giver, hero, or savior, but as hope dealer who gets to walk with community and helps, as we'll begin to see, not just the 20-foot borders in front of us that make up every day's evening news, but the 21-foot ladder movements that will bring about the change we truly seek. Now, how might we do that? First, we have to provide mirrors that honor who our people are. The stories, interviews, research, and experiences that folks like this professor does is not for a community, it's with a community. And we must listen to people, honor their culture and their roots. Indeed, la cultura cura. It is culture that has the power to heal. Then we provide windows to see what's indeed possible. For me, I was shown the power of having a voice like Malcolm X, the strategy of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, the organizational ability of Harriet Tubman, who was dealing with a difficult presidency. Half of her body is paralyzed, and she's still organizing from Canada to Mexico, the Underground Railroad. What might we need today? So I might need Harriet Tubman to write me a love letter tonight and say, "Dear Prophet, dear so-and-so, you think you're going through a hard time? Let me tell you some things. This is your Tia Harriet." I learned that Gandhi could take on difficult presidencies and even kick out entire empires. So why can't we? Honorees, just bless you for walking into your sacred purpose. Bless you for honoring our future. As you walk away from this ceremony, may you walk into your light always and radiate even in so-called times of darkness. Many blessings, and may you channel your intergenerational wisdom always, because presidencies, they come and go, but the wisdom of our peoples will sustain us forever. Gracias.
It's a time for questions and answers briefly.
Hi, Chetos.
So please raise your hands, and he will be responsible for recognizing you.
Thank you, Profe. Let's open it up. Not just questions, your own thoughts. Like we spoke at you a lot, and I deeply apologize for that. What's coming up for you? Sometimes things pass through us through physiology. Like our body speaks to us. Like, have y'all ever heard of this sociological term called chorro? Chorro is the runs. And it's your body saying to you in its own language, like, stop eating them hot Cheetos. Or cuando se te enchina la piel and you get all of these, like, your hair just starts coming up. This is my grandma, by the way, socorro. But your hair starts coming up. It's because you're excited about something. So tell us about your physiology. What's coming up for you? What you feeling? What you thinking? When you hear about these amazing folks who are naive enough to throw back starfish, freedom fighters. I get to stand in their presence. It's amazing. What's coming up for you? And let's not make this about anything I said. There's so many wisdom keepers in the room. What's up? Let's talk. Who's got a question? Who's got a thought? And to break the ice, I'd love to give you a humble little gift. I brought some books. I want to give you a gift for the first person that says, you know what, I really believe in Audre Lorde, who's a radical feminist queer scholar who says, my silence will not protect me. And I'm going to raise that hand. Ahí está. La mera mera, the OG. What's up? By the way, we need you at our high school. So like, we need your program.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know which high school where I'd love to.
Cool. So what's coming up for you?
I know as you mentioned, like your background story and things. So what were some of the ways that you sought like mentors and like resources to help you navigate like that path when you were in Cal or like before that, while also going through?
Yeah. You know, I wish I would have had profes like this profe, who's also from Mexico. Like, if I had sat in your class, I'd be just soaking up wisdom, right? But my profes were homies on the block, under a riverbed. And everyone called them everything negative. Can I describe a quick organization to you that really helped me out? I'm going to describe it, and Drew, you can't give the answer because you already know what's up. Or David, you can't say what's up. Consuelo, you can't say what because you already know. But I'm going to describe something to you. This is an organization in the neighborhood where you have to sell product. You got to wear a uniform, particular color. You got to put in work. You got to be committed. You got to be loyal. And we're going to have your back, but you better have ours. Who am I describing? Help her out. Who am I describing? Yeah, I'm describing the Girl Scouts. You got to sell product. We're pushing them cookies on the block. You got to wear a uniform. You got to be loyal, committed. We're going to have your back. See, Girl Scouts get to thrive in America. Boy Scouts get to thrive in America. Gangs are America's urban terrorists, or at least that's what we're told. We're told that the only thing that could come out of them is death or incarceration. But nah, my mentors were homies who were loaded because they were carrying intergenerational trauma to heal from the pain, but they were dropping wisdom bombs all the time. And when the homies left, I would go cry and hide under a riverbed, and then these tears would start to write these things they later called poetry. So the dream of our high school is homies finna run everything. There's two homies right behind you. Turn around right quick. I'm hoping David and Consuelo will come be the OGs of the school. And be some of the young elders of the school. Because we have over 3 million kids every year in this country that get pushed out. We have 1.8 million kids who are either incarcerated or on ankle monitor. So we're producing this every year, and we're not attracting the homies' talent. So I'm going to try to convince Dr. Prudence Carter here, who is the Dean of the Graduate School of Education, to have us be a lab school. And let's prepare the homies' generation of mentors who look like our kids, who have mirrored experiences, but who operate from a place of love and seeing them through their assets, not through just the broken windows. Because if all we see is trauma-informed practices, we'll never see resiliency-informed practices. That's the kind of mentors I humbly think we need. Great question. I got you on the book later. Other thoughts? Yes, sir.
Buenas tardes, César. Es un gusto verte.
Igualmente.
Me acuerdo cuando estabas en Santa Rosa Junior College.
Dang.
Y estábamos hablando sobre Ed.L.D, Malika, Shabazz. Y es un gusto estar aquí como un estudiante de Berkeley.
Felicidades to you, man. Felicidades. Yeah, let's give some love for that. Quick question. How many people in your classes look like you around here?
So right now, probably one.
You?
In this very room, yeah.
But in your classes, when you navigate.
Well, I mean, luckily, I'm part of a group called Underground Scholars Initiative.
Yeah.
And so we roll deep to the classrooms together because that's the only form of solidarity that we could.
But we need you as our founding principal. So prepárate. What's up?
Pero vine con otro homie de Underground Scholars and one of the homies who's a leader at Round Charter High School.
Mm-hmm.
And we ourselves are developing this youth of color who mentorship program for youth of color, predominantly males at the moment. In the future, we need to replicate and expand something like this for mujeres de color también. And I think that is very interesting that much of what you were speaking of is like that's what we're hoping to engage with here in this very community, because we feel like as residents of Berkeley, like we see how there tends to be a unacknowledgement of West Berkeley, or at least what's left of West Berkeley, because much of it we know is no longer there. But the point that I'm getting at is that we would love to extend our invitation to collaborate with you, because I know that all together we could form some deep solidarity and continue this work.
Oh, imagine. So already, please send it to everybody from Underground Scholars. Y'all are inspiring the nation. So we know a chapter just opened up at UCLA, and if the Institute is not yet partnered with you, I hope they do. I hope y'all are doing decal classes. If you're not, I hope you, because where we want to recruit our future counselors, mentors, psychologists, every position is from Underground Scholars. And so we are already partnered. We're already kin. And that's amazing, because if you think about worldwide, if you think about all Bloods and Crips in the world, all Norteños and Sureños, all Mara Salvatrucha, all the 18, if all of those young people were to unite, revolution is possible. And so people are afraid of that. And so we demonize, we incarcerate, we beat, we pathologize. I've got 1 minute. And that's our dream. Our dream is to create fundamental change. And so we're tired of Mickey Mouse Band-Aid reform. And so how do we create new schools of thought? And we're also going to develop a university, because here's the thing, is that with all of the wisdom in the room, we're not creating new universities. We're not. We're only cooking up K-12 as if the learning stops there. The last college that we built in California since 1980 is UC Merced. But since 1980, we've built 23 new institutions called prisons. So we have $19 billion in our prison system and $5.6 billion in our education system, because we know where we want to funnel kids to. And so you understand the setup, and you're upsetting the setup, but we need the Institute and other folks that are like-minded here to help us upset the setup. Of course we're going to win. Harriet Tubman told us so. We just have to actually listen to her and believe. So I think my time is up, but thank you. Thank you.
Well, of course, I have the unenviable task of following something like this, but I do want to say to you that it does go, and it has been our experience at the Institute to say that women have been at the forefront of much of the stuff that we have recognized, because they have been at the forefront. And I think if you take from it, I know I'm a sociologist saying this, but I think it's really important to hear. If you take his remarks and everybody in this class, who was the first person who opened up their arms and gave you comfort, gave you knowledge? It doesn't go too far. You don't have to be a genius to know who that was, and to know that that feeling that they expressed at that time doesn't leave them throughout the life course. And so, of course, they're going to maintain themselves in this level. I do think it's also important for everyone who's young here or not, and who's minority and left out. Women have often been that. I know I've been moved enormously, but it isn't a single case. I saw Hidden Figures the other day, as well as revisiting Jaime Escalante's idea of a Roosevelt High School and being so good in math, and the idea that we couldn't do math, or women couldn't do math. It's his and everybody else who have won awards today to know, yes, we can. And so with that, I want to say that it's been a pleasure meeting the recipients and listening to them, as well as Dr. Cruz. And I want to thank all of you for coming and showing your support. And I want to encourage you to go back to the back tables and finish off the food. Because otherwise the rest of us will have to eat like me, and I shouldn't. So thank you again, and yes.
Can we have all of the awardees stand with Dr. Cruz and take a picture?
Absolutely, we can do that for sure. Thank you very much.